Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today on this episode, let's talk about crankbaits, but more specifically, let's talk about whether you should be using crankbaits with rattles or no rattles, the silent versions. I think this is a really important topic, and I've learned a lot about, my preferences over the last couple years, especially fishing the TVA. But first, I wanted to mention that I'm going to be offering a lot more guide trips on Lake Chickamauga and Watts Bar in the coming months. Really right now, because we're heading up to the Northeast, and then I head to Alaska, and then we've got the last stretch of tournaments. Really, the openings are in November and December, but I have a lot of people, reaching out to me about guide trips. So if you are interested in going out on Watts Bar or Lake Chickamauga, make sure you send me an email at sonar@sonarfishing.com. We'll get out there, and we're definitely going to be doing a lot more live scope type fishing too on these guide trips. So if you're interested in learning more about forward-facing sonar, as I am, I'll go ahead and take you out and teach you everything that I know. But anyways, let's get started talking about these crankbaits. So these right here, these are, this one's a lot older, as you can tell. I probably found this one, snagged it or something, or found it floating. It looks kind of, beat up, but this is actually a fish catching fool. But you can see here, this is a Strike King 5XD. It's got the rattling version on this one, and they also come in a silent version. Okay, and a lot of crankbaits nowadays, a lot of manufacturers will make that distinction. They'll make both of those, and then they also have some that maybe, like the Strike King ones, they have the 2-tap, or they've got, a single ball in there, tungsten ball. There's a lot of different options for making sound or not making sound when it comes to crankbaits. But to kind of simplify things just a little bit, over the years, I really focused on crankbaits that rattled. I always just felt like that the more sound you could get, the better, fish calling, you'll actually experience. You'll be pulling them to your bait. I always felt like the sound was really important. But over time, as fish get more and more pressured, what I've started to realize is that the silent versions a lot of times are kind of the biggest key when it comes to throwing a crankbait, especially when you're going on fisheries like Lake Chickamauga, Guntersville, all these different fisheries. And kind of my theory on this is, if I'm fishing for really fresh schools of fish that haven't really been pressured that much, maybe they're super active, I still like to use the rattling style baits. I also like to use them in really dirty water. If I'm fishing really super muddy water, which usually I'm going to be using something like a square bill, 2.5, 1.5, something like that. I do generally like to have a rattling bait in that situation. But again, I'll make exceptions if it's an exceptionally pressured lake. And the reason why I think that these silent versions actually will catch more fish under highly pressured situations is not because it's something different necessarily. I don't think it's just because they're conditioned to the sound. Well, they are conditioned to the sound, but what I think it is that this bait really surprises those fish. You've had in the past, when I was learning how to flip and pitch, like one of the biggest keys that you heard from people like Denny Brower or Kevin Van Dam or Tommy Biffle is the importance of having a soft presentation into the water where you're literally surprising those fish because they didn't really know it was coming. It didn't make any splash, it didn't make any sound entering the water. It's just all of a sudden in front of their face, and you get that reaction bite. The same thing I think is happening with these crankbaits is, a crankbait that has a lot of rattles, with a school that's just been hammered to death. You cast this thing, they hear it coming and they know that sound, and they kind of are wary of that sound. But with a silent crankbait, they may not be clued into the fact that this thing's coming and it's bombing through that school. And so just the simple fact that they didn't know it was there and it just all of a sudden just races through that school, you're going to get a reaction bite. And I've seen this time and time again out on Lake Chickamauga especially, is where the silent version, you know, once I stop catching fish on a loud version, or, you know, these fish have just been hit too hard, the silent version actually allows me to catch more fish, because I think it really surprises those fish, and all they can do is react to it by, you know, either swiping at it or like devouring it completely. So I think that is kind of the key. That's kind of my basic template for whether I'm going to be using a rattling crankbait or a silent one. And it really has to do with trying to surprise those fish to get that reaction bite. So the next time you're out there and you're looking to figure out which one you want to throw, I always suggest throwing the rattling version first and trying to get them to react to that. And then kind of follow up with a silent version to pick off more fish once the school shuts down and kind of gets conditioned to that sound. And then you can also do something where you throw in another type of sounding crankbait. So like you can do one of the ones that has like the single tungsten or single steel ball in there, whatever variation the brand that you're using has, you know, give it a different shot. Even try different crankbaits, you know, really experiment. And, you know, once fish get conditioned to one bait, it very, very easily, you know, it's very easy to go ahead and go to another bait and start catching fish again. So those are just some thoughts. I've got a buddy that just showed up, and so I've got to get back to work on the barn dominium. And but I just wanted to go ahead and share my thoughts on rattling baits versus silent crankbaits. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you agree with my assessment? Is this kind of something that you've seen some success with, you know, swapping between the two different versions? And how do you like to use a silent crankbaits versus rattling baits? I want to hear all that in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you trust the process. I'm going to see you out on the water. Take care.